APA style reference of a peer review article. So when you do your article summary, at the end of that, I want the citation of that article so that I can look it up. APA style follows a format that uses the authors, the year of publication, title, issue, so on and so forth. And then another thing that's called a digital object identifier, which is at the end, that DOI. So this is a standard peer review citation, a reference that you would find at the end of a paper with references. It follows by listing the authors in a particular order. Okay, first author is Collins, and second, Carey, and so on. Last names, followed by the initials, and then the last author before that gets an ampersand. Okay, now some of you will come across a particular article that has more than 6 authors on it. Imagine that. There's actually papers out there that have 10 authors on that. It's kind of a nightmare to actually try to track everybody down to make sure that you wanted to say what you meant to say. But that happens because researchers often work in groups. Now, in the case of a more than 6 authors in a paper, do I have to list all the authors individually? No. And here's what you do instead. Say this paper that I found had more than 6 authors and Otto was the last author. Okay, so we have Collins, we have Carey, and then we have we have some authors here. Maybe I'll add myself, like Thibodeau and Huss and Ward. Okay, so just like imagine 3 authors here. Okay, imaginary. If you have more than 6 authors, after you reach the 6th author, okay, so we can actually add another person here. I don't know, Joe Bob. Okay, so Joe Bob is author number 6. You can then put a ... in brackets or an ellipse, which is in brackets there, to represent that there are other authors listed after the 6th author. And then what you would do is you would put that ... followed by the ampersand, followed by the last author in the paper. Okay? Now you're probably, in most cases, not likely to come across that sort of situation, but it does happen. I actually have heard of a physics paper published in the Journal of Science with over 50 authors on it. I mean, that's ridiculous, but there you go. That's the way that the publishing world and research works. People work in groups. This is the title of the article. And in every case, the title of an article is what's called sentence case, which means the first word in the title is capitalized, but everything else is written out as if it were a sentence. Okay? It's not a complete sentence, it's just the title of the article itself. The only time that you're going to capitalize things is in the case of a proper noun. So let's say this became, I don't know, the measure of motivation, like the one that people used, and that's the only measure of motivation out there. Okay, so measure of motivation would get treated as a proper noun. Okay, so you would capitalize the appropriate words. All right. Next comes the journal title, and it's italicized. After this title here, there's a period, and then there's a comma, and then this is the volume number 23. And you'll find articles presented in often a kind of a tree diagram, you know, where you can kind of look from volume to volume, and then by issue, and those issues will have pages in them. Okay, so an issue has a page range. And sometimes they start from 1, and sometimes they don't start from 1. Okay, sometimes they start from page 400, because it's just a continuation of the last issue, same volume. when you write the volume out, you're not going to actually put the issue. You're just going to put the volume, unless the pagination of the article starts anew. So let's say this was the very first paginated issue of this article. You would put in parentheses the issue, followed by the page numbers, okay, as I've shown here. Okay, so since that's actually not the case, you can just leave it with the volume, followed by page numbers, there's a comma. And then the last piece after that period, after the page number, is called a DOI. Now a DOI is a funky thing because you're going to see it and it's this long serial number, randomized number sort of thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually look that article up by its DOI. Well, we were going to look it up by the DOI, but apparently I can't do that. So, hey, look at that. All right, so if I looked it up by DOI 10.1037/stuff, what I get is the actual article itself, okay? The DOI is like a permanent link to that article, and you can find said article with this specific serial number. So you'll want to include that DOI. Some articles don't have a DOI. Not every article is going to do this. This was instituted in APA style and the internet, much less, only about a little over 10 years ago, perhaps like 10, 15 years ago, when I was actually just getting into graduate school, I think. It's hard to think that that's far back, but DOIs are a recent kind of thing, and so you're going to see a lot of articles that are older that don't have DOIs. So if it doesn't, you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Last thing, don't put a period after the DOI unless it's the period's actually there. Okay. So all of you are going to be presenting a peer-reviewed article. This is the peer-reviewed citation.